Thinking of escaping the Toronto rat race for the quaint vineyard-lined streets of Niagara-on-the-Lake? Before you swap that TTC card in for wine tasting passes, hold up. Because today we're going to dive into the real pros and cons of living in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And if you stick around to the very end, like usual, I will introduce you to a great little gem of a place to visit here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. I know usually I introduce you to a bakery or a cafe. Today is a special place. You might be able to get a coffee there, but they're more known for their craft beer. But you're gonna have to stick around to the very end of today's video to find out what that gem is. I'm Scott White, one half of our Living in Niagara with the Ellen and Scott team here at Rebel Realty. Ellen and I have decades of real estate experience, also in home construction myself, design with Ellen, and our passion is guiding folks just like you toward a lifestyle you deserve, like you can find here in Niagara region, and more specifically, Niagara-on-the-Lake. So smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell to make sure that you will never miss anything happening here in the Niagara region. And today, as I said, we're going to look at the real pros and cons of living here in the Niagara region. So let's uncork the obvious pro number one of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and that is, it is Canada's wine capital. With over 40 world-class wineries right here in your doorstep, just over my shoulder, you have ample places to taste your wine if that's what you're into. A standout location, there we have all kinds of them, but the one I'm going to talk about today is, of course, the great one, the Wayne Gretzky Estates. Yes, named after and owned by the great one, hockey famous Wayne Gretzky, known for blending award-winning wines and whiskey, and they even have an ice rink for winter activities at their winery. Of course they would, right? You want to check out the Stratus Vineyards. Their sustainable practices and sleek, modern tasting room make them truly a special place to check out. It is so fun when we have friends and people just like yourself coming in and touring homes here in Niagara region, and we take them to a little winery, and very quickly they are swishing their glasses, smelling it like a real, true sommelier. However, with all this wine tasting and beautiful wineries comes a lot of tourists. And Niagara-on-the-Lake attracts over 3 million visitors every single year. They come from all over Canada, North America, Europe, and even as far away as Asia. It's a magical place to live and steeped in history. Beautiful, historic buildings that really add to that charm. And of course, we have heroes like Laura Secord. In 1813, she traversed the Niagara Escarpment, traveled 32 kilometers with the assistance of some Indigenous warriors to warn the British of the upcoming American strategy and plan on their attack at Beaver Dams. Because of that intel, we won that battle. So that's pro number two. But remember, charm costs. Niagara-on-the-Lake is one of the most expensive areas to live in all of the Niagara region. House prices are in around $950,000, $975,000 on average, to the average home price in all the rest of Niagara at $750,000. But that sure beats the price of homes in Toronto. That's averaging right now $1.2 million. But if you're looking at the Niagara region, Niagara-on-the-Lake is a little bit more expensive. Now, there is an area in Niagara-on-the-Lake called Glendale, and their prices are running on average around $725,000, but they're not in the historic part or St. David's or Virgil. If you're looking for that historic charm of Niagara-on-the-Lake, you're gonna miss that in Glendale. But however, some houses can actually see Bass Pro Shop and the outlet malls. So you can get a lot easier shopping from there, get onto the QEW a lot quicker and easier, so that you can get other places outside of the Niagara region a lot quicker from Glendale. So that's some benefits of Glendale, but that's also a con with the pricing of Niagara-on-the-Lake. But let me tell you, with all that charm and all that higher priced amenities, we have one of the safest communities in all of the Niagara region right here at Niagara-on-the-Lake. Niagara-on-the-Lake boasts a very low crime rate, 53% lower than the national average and 36% lower than the Ontario average. It's a tight-knit community, ideal for families. It's a place where people from all ages and genders walk and live without much concern. There's still a lot of people that I know living in Niagara-on-the-Lake who don't even lock their doors, but shh, don't tell my wife that. She doesn't want anyone unlocking their doors. But that is the lifestyle. That is the way of life here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. With that community, that safety element comes some really great schools. Some of the best elementary schools are found here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We have Crossroads Public School and St. Michael's Catholic Elementary School. They consistently score at 88, well above the national average of schools that is 67.5%. Now, the nice thing about all of the Niagara region is the DSBN, or the District School Board of Niagara, takes care of all of the schools in Niagara region. So anywhere you go in the Niagara region, you're going to get some really good schools, but Niagara-on-the-Lake has some of the best rated schools in all of Niagara as well. Which brings me to a con number 3, and that's if missing big box convenience stores, Niagara-on-the-Lake may not be the place that you want to come to, because Niagara-on-the-Lake leans more towards boutique stores, especially in Old Town. For a little break here, I gotta tell you, we are currently right now at Queenston Heights at Brock's Monument. You may have seen it in the background a couple times. It's a great place to see over Niagara-on-the-Lake. So we would come here quite regularly with my mother, who played clarinet in a band almost every Sunday here at the bandstand. And I would spend oodles of time right here in this fountain. It was a little different. It was kind of a bigger fountain, but very similar to when I was a little kid. And I would climb up and down Brock's Monument 4, 5, 6 times a Sunday when I was here. So just had to stop that and give you that little break of nostalgia on my part. And that's my wife, for those of you who do not know. The other half of the realtors that make up Living in Niagara with Ellen and Scott team. She, with me, can share what it is like to live here in the Niagara region. We love it. We think it's a fantastic place, and we move people like you here all the time, coming from the GTA and other parts of Ontario and even the world. So if that happens to be you, if you're looking at moving down here in 9 days or 90 days or even 9 months, do not be afraid to send us a text, give us a call on the phone, or even shoot us an email. And we will help you make this transition as smooth as possible, stress-free, and you can start enjoying the Niagara life with us. A great pro of living in Niagara-on-the-Lake is the Shaw Festival. The Shaw Festival is exceptional quality off-Broadway productions, celebrating the writing and plays of George Bernard Shaw and his contemporaries. Plays like anything goes happening right now at the Shaw Festival. There's a number of different venues. We've talked about that before in previous videos. So if you want to learn more about the Shaw Festival, go and check out our previous videos on Niagara-on-the-Lake. But that is a great aspect of living in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Not only do that, they have that type of art, but festivals galore happening in Niagara-on-the-Lake, like the annual Peach Festival in August. So it's not just about wines and vineyards. There's also orchards here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And every summer in August, Niagara-on-the-Lake celebrates the peach, one of my favorite fruits. I don't know about you, but it's one of my favorites. And then, of course, we have the summer concert series that Trios Wineries put together all throughout the summer. Now, this isn't a free concert like many other summer concert series in Port Colborne and Fonthill and Welland. This is a paid activity at a winery. It's usually around $100. But hey, what more do you want? Great music, great entertainment, great fellowship, and a couple glasses of wine to boot. What more do you want? Another downfall or con of living in Niagara-on-the-Lake, because of the charm and the history, is the red tape. There is a large portion of Niagara-on-the-Lake that has historical qualities to it and are preserved because of that history. Down Old Town, and a lot of homes and buildings that have been here since the 1700s and 1800s. So If you move into any of these homes or into these areas, you can be faced with a lot of red tape if you want to do any renovations or updating of these homes or buildings, just because of the historical aspect of them. Also, because of that, there is a lot of red tape for building new homes in Niagara-on-the-Lake. And as a result, the infrastructure can be a little bit aged as well, a little bit rougher roads in some parts, simply because they're not getting that revenue that comes from new builds that are being used throughout the rest of Niagara and Welland, St. Catharines, and other parts of Niagara. But that is one con when you're faced with the charm and history of a place like Niagara-on-the-Lake. Niagara-on-the-Lake scores very high on the walkability, especially Old Town. You can get to the waterfront in Lake Ontario and the beaches. You can walk to Shaw Festival, the boutique stores, all in old Niagara-on-the-Lake, and walking trails, oodles of them to go. You can walk up and down the escarpment. There's the Bruce Trail begins right here at Queenston Heights, and there is a trail that follows the steps of Laura Secord from her house up to the famous DeQ home, which is, I mentioned again in one of our previous videos, my great-great-great-grandfather's home, Captain John DeQ. They're in Thorold, on the border of Thorold and St. Catharines. So there's all kinds of trails and activities in that nature here in Niagara-on-the-Lake for walking, for biking, for cross-country skiing. So if you're into that and enjoy that kind of stuff, if you enjoy nature, again, Niagara-on-the-Lake might be the place you want to move to. Which brings me also to another con, and that is the seasonal aspect of a lot of homes. There are a lot of Airbnbs here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you can see why. I told you we have over 3 million visitors, tourists coming into the area every single year. Where are we going to house them? Not only in the hotels and stuff, but a lot of people are looking at Airbnb as a great way of augmenting their income. And so there are a number of Airbnbs throughout Niagara-on-the-Lake which can give a more seasonal feel of the area. Now, Niagara-on-the-Lake, like almost every city in Niagara, are making regulations to limit Airbnbs. Niagara-on-the-Lake right now actually has a moratorium on new Airbnbs. So if that is something that you're thinking of doing, if you don't already have one, it's not already licensed, you're not going to be able to get a license to do an Airbnb here in Niagara-on-the-Lake at this time. But there still are a number of Airbnbs that are functioning and working, and that can give you a seasonal feel of life here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which some people that we have spoken to and know call that a con. So that pretty much sums up our 5 pros and our 5 cons, as I promised I would do. The real life, what it's really like living here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and all of its pros, all of its cons. So what's the verdict? What do you think? Niagara-on-the-Lake has some amazing perks, but along with those perks comes some trade-offs. Please leave us a comment. Tell us what your favorite pro is and what your favorite con is, and maybe you may have a different pro or a different con that you've experienced here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We'd love to hear about it. And finally, as I promised, let me introduce you to the Grist. Ellen and I were already there. We had a nice little meal, nachos that were big enough to feed 20 people. We actually had people coming to our table, other patrons, taking pictures of our food, asking us, of course, if they could do so, taking a picture of this mound of food that you see right here. Let me tell you, at the Grist, the service is fantastic. Some of the greatest service that you're going to receive. The food and the menu is spectacular. It is a fun place, great vibe, and people from all over the Niagara region come to the Grist just to enjoy that atmosphere. So if you find yourself coming to look for a home here in the Niagara region, give Ellen and I a call. We'll show you around, and we'll even take you out to enjoy the Grist and get yourself a craft beer and maybe even a thin pizza. Some of the things that the Grist is most famous for, but all of their menu is worth giving a try. So that's today's video. What it's like to really live in Niagara-on-the-Lake, pros and cons. Hope you enjoyed it. As I've said before, hit that like button. Please subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you'll be the first to hear of anything happening into Niagara here. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you in our next video.